At this time, I'd like to welcome our main speaker for the night. This is a gentleman who I met, we were just trying to decide when, but it was early 1990s, back when we had the boat rallies at the Capitol with the Hunting and Angling Club. Some of you, I'm sure, were with us back then. But anyway, our next speaker is Pete Maina. He's been involved with the fishing industry for 20, 30 years now, well-known Muskie fisherman, written articles, does TV, had guide services, had his own tackle company. Been a long-time supporter of fishing and tourism in general, and an outspoken spokesman for sportsmen and the protection of fisheries throughout the upper Midwest. So let's give a nice warm welcome to Pete Maina.
I appreciate it, Mark, and great to see you again, and Doug and Howard, and a few of the people that I've met through PERM. Unfortunately, Howard's been trying to get me down here for, I don't know, probably about 6 years now, and the schedules never really work out. But has anybody ever seen The Next Bite TV show? I hope there's at least one in here. Hey, we got. That's one of the TV shows that I'm involved in. That show airs on Versus. I've been filming. My first real filming opportunity really started with John Gillespie's Waters and Woods. Has anybody ever seen that show? There's a few of you here. All right. I know that actually not too long after I appeared in at the rally down here at the state capitol, Howard and Bud Grant and I actually did a television show on some of these treaty issues as they relate to the fisheries in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. So that was kind of an interesting little thing that came from the associations. But I've kind of, in a way, in the fishing industry, been able to kind of live the dream. I started out as a little kid at a resort to just love to fish, and somehow with no exact plan at all, I just decided that fishing was probably more important than going to college, and I ended up in a lure business, and eventually, I've gotten to the point where mainly what I do is promotions and television, and my whole life really relies on the fisheries. And, that's something that I think, is something we lose every now and again, is in the industry, especially people like me that actually make a living off of it. Sometimes it's easy to get more caught up in all of the new gadgets and tools and teachings that we do to tell people how to go out and catch more big fish. And the reality is you can't catch something that isn't there. The bottom line is one thing that I do when I look for places to go do a television show, I mean, the simple fact is I want getting a television show to be easy. I want it to get done. I want to be able to catch nice big fish. One of the things that I do is I look for how healthy that fishery is, and from that point I know that I've got a much better chance of being successful. So that's what this group is all about, and what Howard asked me to really come down and speak to you about. I don't remember exactly how we got hooked up, but I know that the Voight decision occurred, and the spearing was opened up on and off reservation in northern Wisconsin. As a young guy that was just starting to make my living guiding and growing up on a resort, it was a real concern of mine. There was groups of us that went out to boat landings and protested the spring spearing. There was a couple of groups that formed in the state to try and fight against these rights, and all of them basically weren't as organized as this PERM group. Really did some things for, I think, in a poor way with the way they demonstrated against it. They didn't necessarily go about it the proper way like Howard is. One thing that Sarah and PERM, to me, have done is show all sides of it, rather than it being a jump up and down type of. Is it because I'm moving around a lot?
It did it for me 2 feet.
Okay, all right, but anyway, it got me off balance here though. Where was I at? I guess what it got me to thinking more than just the selfish aspect, the resource itself, how it affects me personally as I got to realize how big these issues were on a actual equal rights standpoint. And some of the more simpler things, like the bottom line is we've got separate issues based on race, and that's just a very simple, basic thing that we shouldn't have, you know, on any particular issue in the country. It's really kind of a double standard, and it helped me in seeing some of the information provided through PERM and CIRA, to understand that maybe some of the biggest losers in this whole issue are the actual Indian people themselves, who are really, I mean, let's be honest about it. This whole thing initially was kind of based on helping a people who had been apparently experienced a misjustice. And when you really look at it now, under two governments essentially, you've got a group of people who have had more government help than any other group of people, but in reality, how much better off is the average Native American as well that's in the reservation system. And I think that's maybe the biggest consideration of all, but it's definitely from an economic standpoint where Randy was going with this whole issue and how it affects things. It's been a huge thing. Strictly from that standpoint, I watched the resort business in the spring basically collapse. I've seen guide businesses hurt. Of course, we've got a 50-50 co-managed type thing of the resource there in the state of Wisconsin, and that's a disaster every single spring, because what they do is they have, I don't know if they have safe allowable harvest levels here. I believe it's kind of similar to what goes on in Mille Lacs. So basically, the DNR and the Glyphwick decide what is the proper harvest that can supposedly come out of a body of water for each species that's safe. I don't know exactly what safe means, if that's mediocrity or exactly what it means, but then the folks at the tribal bands, they make their declarations of how many walleyes they're going to take, and then that affects the actual limits that they put out every spring for the walleyes on different lakes. And that's something that every year really negatively affects the spring business, because people hear that they might be only able to keep 0 walleyes or 1 walleye, or maybe only 2 walleyes as far as the bag limit. Just in general, it's been real bad in that aspect. And the other thing that's been interesting to me, that being directly involved with the DNR and in dealing with a lot of the people in general out there in the public, there's another backlash in that when you've got separate rights for a different group of people, and that I try and preach, selective harvest, healthy fisheries, which fish that are best for the fisheries out of a particular species to be released, and how to properly release them. And you explain these things to people, and you try and encourage them to not keep too many fish. If you're going to keep fish, these are the fish that you want to keep. And then because of what's going on with the inequities, I don't know how many times I heard it, especially right after these issues started, that people say, well, I'm gonna keep everything I can and kill it. I don't want them to get it. Now, that's not necessarily the right attitude, but unfortunately that's one of the side effects, one of the backlashes of this whole issue of having separate rights based on race. And then the other thing I've actually seen, being in direct contact with a lot of the people in the DNR and fisheries, I actually see jealousies and problems between the DNR and the Glyphwick management. You've got the tribal management, which is completely paid for by the taxpayers. They've got all the money they could possibly deal with it. They can do whatever they want and look great doing it, and of course do things that the DNR can't do. So the DNR people get upset by that. They've got lower budgets. They've got a different set of rules, and they're charged with co-managing with this group of people that don't necessarily want to co-manage friendly with them. And I think you actually get, in fact, I got to the point of knowing, I would never consider naming names, but that there's literally hard feelings, and to a certain extent some of the DNR's fisheries people are almost like, we don't necessarily want this fishing to be good because it's going to be, we told you so. This is a bad deal. Give us, we should be managing these fisheries. We shouldn't have to co-manage. So there's definitely a lot of things here, a lot of issues, and with regard to economic impact, I really have no way of putting a number on it, but I just know that it's huge, it's significant. In areas like where I live in northern Wisconsin, where there's tons of water, I think one of the reasons it's not a bigger issue is that there's simply a lot of recreational traffic, that you know, pleasure boats and jet skis and that type of thing, and so the businesses aren't quite as adversely affected as they would be otherwise on a body of water, say way up in Canada, where they rely completely on the fishery for tourism. But it's you know, definitely from an economic standpoint, it's a tough deal. And I guess I really want to, I just want to finish with, you know, wanting to thank PERM for everything they've done, and in a way I apologize for not being able to take more personal time myself. I'm somewhat disappointed that, you know, myself and others that actually make a living in the fishing industry don't put more time and effort towards good things like this, important things like this, and I think to a certain extent we're somewhat worried about our business and the politically correct aspect of everything these days. You know, we get concerned about those types of things, and one of the tools that has been used against anybody that has a problem with treaty issues is always the racist label. So I think if there's a single suggestion, as well as I hear it all the time, in Howard I actually suggest PERM and I suggest CIRA, but I still see a lot of complaints out there about the treaty rights issues, and in Wisconsin the winter spearing and some of these things that we see that directly affect, you know, my main species, which is a muskie, and people still complain and complain and complain, but then they ask, what can we do about it? And in the end, I think if there's anything that you know, maybe I need to think about a little bit, and you folks at PERM need to think about, is how maybe to get that message out, what Randy had to say at the end of this thing, that the people just throw their hands up and they're like, well, there's, you know, we can complain and it's bad and it's not fair, but we don't know what to do. And I think maybe if there's anything that we could work on going forward, it would be the answer to that, you know, those questions. What can we do? How can we, you know, we're upset and we don't really like it. We don't think it's good for anybody. And you've done a tremendous job, again, on the education aspect of that it is not good for anybody. But again, to give people an outlet of how they can try and help, maybe where their efforts, you know, might go specifically. But I appreciate you having me down here. It's good that I could finally make it down, and well, thank you, and support PERM. I know I will be pushing for you. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete Maina, everyone. Thank you very much, Pete.